students. We are at a pivotal moment where the future of nearly 2 million students in our community colleges hinges on their ability to access financial aid. The September 3rd deadline for applying through the FAFSA, or California Dream Act application, CADAA, is not just a date on the calendar. It is a gateway to opportunities that can transform lives. California community colleges are the largest system of higher education in the country, serving over 1.9 million students. These institutions are a melting pot of diversity, with more than 70% of students coming from various ethnic backgrounds and 48% identifying as Hispanic. Many of these students face economic challenges. 65% are classified as Perkins Economically Disadvantaged. Yet despite the availability of financial aid, many undocumented students are not applying for these critical resources. Our goal today is to bridge this gap, to provide clear, actionable information and guidance that will empower these students to secure the financial aid they need to continue their education and pursue their dreams. For more information, you can visit Better FAFSA, that's spelled F as in Frank, A, F as in Frank, S as in Sam, A, FAFSA, Better, CADAA. And don't worry, we'll be sending information with this spelling out as soon as the briefing ends. Our speakers today include Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission and a tireless advocate for student financial aid. Yvonne Hernandez, President of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, who will share practical advice on navigating the financial aid application process. And Nancy Joditis, Director of Higher Education at Immigrants Rising, who will highlight the support systems available to help students and their families through this journey. Speakers, please speak slowly, as I'm doing, for our Spanish interpreters, and we encourage reporters to enter questions in the chat, which we will address after each speaker as time allows. Speakers, please respond, monitor the chat, and respond as you feel inspired to. We will send a video of today's briefing with expanded bios and contact information for each speaker to all participants later today. And now let's begin with Dr. Daisy Gonzalez. Dr. Gonzalez, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to some of you. The first thing I want to ask is I see a number of questions already in the chat. So before I begin, I want to ask anyone that works at the California Student Aid Commission to just do a little heart and take a look at the chat box so that we can begin to answer some of the questions. I have the honor of joining you this morning as the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission, otherwise known as CSAC. And I join you this morning with a sense of urgency, but also deep gratitude. Gratitude because you are joining us this morning, and a very special thank you to our partners, the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. Thank you, President Hernandez. and the president of Immigrants Rising. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us today. This morning, I have three things I want to share with you. The first is, who is CSAC? The second is, why have we convened you here today? And the third is, what do California's families and students need to know with urgency? So let me start with the first. Who is CSAC? The California Student Aid Commission is the principal state agency responsible for administering financial aid programs for California students attending public and private universities and colleges, including vocational schools. Utilizing state and federal dollars at the center of the California Student Aid Commission is our vision and our mission for the state of California. And that is to make education beyond high school financially accessible to all Californians. And I need you to know that to me, this is a personal mission. It is a professional calling because I'm joining you this morning as a higher education advocate and living proof of the power of financial aid for our students. As a former Cal Grant and foster youth grant recipient, I have walked the path of many of our students in California, and I understand the transformative power of financial aid. My journey began as a foster youth in Los Angeles, California, but I also received an incredible gift as a foster youth, and that is the gift of being able to access higher education. By receiving a Cal Grant and a Chafee Foster Youth Grant, I was able to find myself at a California community college. And I stepped into the lecture halls of Los Angeles Valley College at the age of 15. Later, I went to Mills College, which is a private nonprofit institution here in California. And I went to the University of California, Santa Barbara, where I earned a master's and a PhD. And so I've dedicated my entire career to the classroom, to education, because of this gift that California gave me. I have led as the first Latina deputy and interim chancellor of California's community colleges, leaving that post just 30 days ago, and now as the proud executive director of the largest system of financial aid in the United States. But stories like mine do not happen by accident, nor do they happen by luck. Here in California, students like me have access to apply and qualify for financial aid, which is why we are here. We are here for our September 3rd deadline, which is a key opportunity for students who are seeking to attend a California community college in the 24-25 academic year. So I'm moving on to the second part of why we're here, and that is the urgency of September 3rd. Financial aid is the most important ingredient for student success in higher education. And that's why we are here. We are here because September 3rd, as a deadline for California's community college students, is a lifeline. But September 3rd is also that front door to higher education. And it is also California's ability to continue to lead this country as a leader in higher education for mixed status families and for immigrant students in California. You see, in the 22-23 California state budget, Governor Newsom established a college degree attainment goal where 70% of Californians by the year 2030 will earn a post-secondary degree. So September 3rd is that opportunity for financial aid to be accessible to the majority of Californians. Californians can attend one of California's 116 community colleges by applying for financial aid on September 3rd. So if there is a student who intends to attend a California community college this fall, that likely means in August or September, the urgency of this deadline cannot be overstated. The deadline, September 3rd, you're going to hear us say that over and over again, means that there are still resources available for Californians. But let me share a little bit about who those Californians are. Our community colleges, as Sandy mentioned, are the gateway to opportunities to the majority of Californians, but especially for low-income students, and especially for immigrant families, and for those who may not be fully documented. Our community colleges serve the largest majority of California DREAM Act students, serving 55% of DREAM Act students. And also, California's community colleges serve the largest percentage of students who qualify as low-income students. That means that they qualify for financial aid. 54% of them attend the California Community College. This means that their annual income is below $40,000. So our September 3rd deadline is critical. Students, regardless of their documentation status or that status of their family members, can qualify to have tuition covered, as well as aid to help cover costs like rent, food, transportation, and books. There's even additional aid to help cover childcare and student parents as a result of prior investments by Governor Newsom and the legislature. So by working together, September 3rd for Californians means that there are $383 million that can go towards aid to support California community college students. We also know that this month, as you will hear from Ivan and Nancy, has been increasingly difficult. There have been a number of challenges this year, which have led to declines in applications. And the deck that we will share with all of you afterwards will show you which regions and where those application declines are. But for the purposes of this briefing this morning, I want to focus on the task at hand, meaning what is the action that we need students and families to take? We know, of course, there's declining enrollment, a new federal application process, which has resulted in some challenges for some students, especially mixed status families. And yet in front of us is this opportunity to change the odds, to help California students and their families fill out that FAFSA. So earlier this year, and in partnership with the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, with Immigrants Rising, we are encouraging all families and all students in California to look to our financial aid application process to qualify for these resources. It does, of course, mean that the California Student Aid Commission also wants to encourage students and families to complete their financial aid, but especially those who come from immigrant families or who find themselves in a mixed status family. It means that as a speaker, I have to recognize the reality of those students. For families and students who are in this situation, I want you to know that your dreams are not only worthy, but they are possible. I want you to know that the California Student Aid Commission understands that our most vulnerable students are undocumented students, many of whom are and will attend a community college throughout this state. More than 12% of all students in California's public K-12 schools are estimated to be from a family where one or more parents does not have a Social Security number. That's 12%. So to our families and students who are in this situation, we, the California Student Aid Commission, want you to know that college is possible, that your information is safe with us, and that we have resources dedicated to help you complete the California DREAM Act application. Here at the California Student Aid Commission, we believe that your dreams are possible, and we know that our call center is ready to answer your questions. We have a special toolkit just to help those families, webinars to help walk through some of the challenges that you are seeing, and incredible partner organizations like the Student Senate for California Community Colleges and Immigrants Rising, who are also connecting the dots to make sure that all students can access higher education. I'm going to begin to close now and just share a few ending remarks as we hand it over to the most important voice, at least from my perspective, and those are our students. So thank you, Ivan, for being here. And I'll just share, financial aid is transformative. It can be the difference between a student pursuing their dreams or putting them on hold. It certainly was for me. So it's crucial that we reach every student, especially those from disadvantaged communities who may not know that resources are still out there, and that we ensure that they don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity. I know that it can feel intimidating to get through that application, but our team is ready and stands ready to help many Californians make their dreams possible. And I know that with your help, we can reach those families, those students, and let them know that California is a leader and has a solution, and that is in our California Dream Act application. That application will allow us to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind in California. So I urge you to encourage all students who want to attend the California Community College this fall, that would mean the 24-25 school year, to apply for financial aid by September 3rd. But really today, go today, get it done before September 3rd to receive those resources in the fall. And please visit csac.ca.gov. To our community organizations, parents, and teachers who may be reading and hearing about the September 3rd deadline, please share this information with students and families that you serve. There are so many resources that our students need, and we each play a role in making sure that their dreams are possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. That was an inspired presentation. And I'm reading questions from the chat. One question is, what is the difference between financial aid and student loans?
Thank you for that question, Sandy. And I'll also ask the team to send any links that can help us provide further context. Financial aid is the bigger landscape for how we fund a student's education, not just in California, but across the nation. Financial aid includes our grants, our scholarships, work study, which is a federal program, and here in California, we innovative and also provide work experience opportunities for undocumented students. And as a part of that, the institutions themselves have their own scholarships and grants. So loans become a part of that ecosystem for what financial aid is. Of course, we prioritize grants, scholarships, work study, and encourage loans as that tool, as a part of the package. But what I want to make sure that I get across is California is innovative, particularly for California community college students. You want to apply for grants and scholarships because, as I just shared, more than 50% of students actually qualify to earn free tuition at a California community college. And that's through the grants that are available to those students on September 3rd.
Thank you. And a question that was answered partially in the chat, but people may not notice, which I think is very relevant, which is, to what extent does qualifying for financial aid risk triggering a public charge? Notice, should public charge be reinstated after the election?
Sandy, I don't think I understand the question.
There,
Can you
there,
ask it in a
there,
different way?
sure. The fear of public charge remains very heavy in many communities. So applying for benefits of any kind often brings fear of risking a reinstated public charge somehow finding you and perhaps punishing you for having received financial benefits. Could you just explain the way in which financial aid, such as these very important grants, does not in any way trigger public charge concerns?
No, thank you, Sandy. Thank you for asking in a different way. And I know that Yvonne and Nancy, who also does a lot of work in this area, both at the state and federal level, will have a lot more to say. So I'll put a little star for their remarks. And what I will share with you is data protection is incredibly important for the California Student Aid Commission. It's why we are not afraid to put in a public way what our policy is, to reassure students that when it comes to any grants or scholarships or any resources that we are asking students and families to apply to, that they feel confident and safe in doing so. It is very important that California continue to lead the nation in this way. And I can tell you and reassure you, it's the reason why we put it in these talking points. Your data, your information is secure at the California Student Aid Commission. And if you have looked at California's track record of standing side by side with immigrants, with mixed status families, we will continue to do so.
Great. Thank you. Please stay on with us as we will come back with final questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. We go now to Ivan Hernandez, President of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. Thank you, Ivan, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sandy and Dr. Gonzalez, for inviting me. Good morning. Buenos dias, everyone. My name is Ivan Hernandez, and I serve proudly as the president of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, which oversees, empowers, and uplifts the voices of over 2 million California community colleges at the local, state, and federal levels through policy advocacy and congressional legislative visits. But before I talk more about the SCCC, I want to share more about who I am, what I do, and where I come from. Well, I am very lucky that I was born in the USA. However, I grew up in Mexico. I lived the majority of my life in Mexico, more specifically Hidalgo, in case anyone knows. And it was until the age of 14 that I moved back to the United States, in this case, California. I moved back to California for two main reasons. One, I wanted to pursue higher education. That is still my long-term goal. Two, at the time, I had been diagnosed with leukemia, and unfortunately, there wasn't that many resources in Mexico. So I moved to the US, I pursued treatment, and I decided to stay and pursue higher education. I have to acknowledge that my parents and siblings, they live in Mexico, and they don't have the financial weights of supporting my education. So it has always been up to me to find a way to get a scholarship, get a grant, apply for financial aid, and just try to fund my education in that way. So I have been very lucky that financial aid has been such a big defining factor in my education, because without financial aid, I possibly don't think I could be in a education system like I am now. So with that being said, I do want to say that this year, it has been extremely frustrating and challenging for individuals from mixed status families, such as myself, to have access to higher education. For I am the type of individual who usually gets their FAFSA application in like a week or 2 weeks after the application process has opened. However, this year, I recently submitted my FAFSA like last week, and it was months and months and months of just stressful thoughts about how am I gonna pay for college? You know, I made it this far. I don't want to give up. I consider getting loans. And it was just a constant back and forth conversation with my family members, with friends, and individuals who they said they understood, but in reality, it is not the same, right? And so I acknowledge that I'm very lucky to have a relationship with Dr. Gonzalez due to her being the previous deputy chancellor for the California Community College Systems. So I was very lucky to send her an email, and she connected me with the California Student Aid Commission, CADAA, which really helped me out with this process. And I have to acknowledge that it only took 2 hours for the process to get accomplished. And to me, that was just something that I felt like I was very lucky to have these positions, but I feel like all of our other students who are currently struggling, they don't have access to these resources. And I really want them to know that we are here. We are here to support them, whether that is through CADAA, whether that is through the Student Senate. We are just here one step away. And September 3rd is coming up. I want to make sure that every single student who is currently struggling gets this access. And I know it's always easier said than done. And not long ago, I was still in the same shoes of just not knowing where to start, how to reach out. I constantly reach out to my institution and FAFSA, and I never really didn't hear much back from them. FAFSA said, oh, it's an issue, we're working on it, but I didn't know that it was a quick fix until CSAC came in and really met with me one-on-one and walked me through the process, sent me a very detailed email. This is how you should do it. And since then, like I said, it only took about 2 hours for it to get done. So I also want to acknowledge that financially, it not only helps you with your tuition, but it helps you cover costs of books, housing, transportation, any other basic need that you need. And like I mentioned, for individuals like myself, The only way I'm funding education is through grants, scholarships, and just in general federal and state institution grants that I'm currently receiving. So if you're out there, whether that is in this live stream or if you get the message from here or eventually a weeks later, I want you to know that you're not alone, that we're here. I spoke on behalf of all of our students from the California community systems. We want you to join us because California community college system really changed my life, really got me to where I am now, to the point where I have opportunities I never had. Like pretty recently, I finished my internship with Microsoft, and it was just very uplifting and empowering to see someone whose English is a second language, who recently moved to the US, who is currently pursuing a degree, have these opportunities. So that's the message I want you to take. It's never too late. September 3rd seems to be very close, but trust me, once you get the help, it only takes 2 hours to get the process done, if not less. So with that being said, I would love to take any questions, but know that we're here and we're here constantly supporting you in every step of the way.
But could I ask before taking a couple of questions from the chat, what languages are available to people who ask for help from CSAC? Are there language, are there people who can provide help in multiple languages in addition to Spanish?
Sandy, of course. Sorry, not sure if that was a question for Ivan or for us. Happy to answer that question. Also asking Michael and Sarah Beth to put a link. Our applications are available in multiple languages. We also have a very similar strategy for our call center. And those are all made possible through philanthropy. They are recent expansions at the California Student Aid Commission. We continue to expand the number of languages, but I will ask the team to post the top languages that we currently have information available in. And I know that Nancy's probably going to mention the incredible toolkits that we have deployed, also available in multiple languages. So our toolkits are available as well. Thank you, Ivan, for your remarks.
Great. Ivan, you mentioned the difficulty of the problems with FAFSA and the waits and the delays. What are some of the other factors that may be discouraging people from applying by our September 3rd deadline? What are you concerned people are afraid or perhaps feeling this just isn't going to work for them?
Certainly. And I can share a few experiences from some friends. So some friends, they are scared that by disclosing that their parents don't have a social security number, it will be easier for our government to know that they are illegal and that they currently live unlawfully here in the United States. So that's a common concern that I hear, specifically because now parents need to sign up through the platform and disclose publicly that they do not have a, well, not publicly, but at least in the application that they do not have a social security number. So that's one. The second one is many students feel like they will not receive any kind of financial aid, whether that is because they come from middle income families or perhaps they have some other circumstances. They sometimes don't think they will receive any kind of financial aid at all, which is not true. Of course, it changes case by case, but that's often a common conception I hear. People saying, well, I don't think I'm going to get any financial aid, so they don't apply. The third one in general, people think the application process is difficult, and mainly because it's a brand new system. It's a brand new way of filling out the form. It used to be done in a certain way. Now that I did it and got support from CSAC, I learned that it wasn't actually too difficult. From the student perspective, it is easier. It's just that the common struggles from glitches in the system, students coming back and forth between not really understanding sometimes the language that is being used, because of course they could use it in Spanish, but something that we have found out is specific words don't always translate to Spanish the way we want it to. So sometimes it's easier to just go with the flow and try English, but if English is not your first language, it gets a bit difficult. So some mistakes or some common conceptions that students have before applying is they need someone that helps them. And unfortunately, our institutions, sometimes they're very busy, just given that we have thousands and thousands of students who are currently going through the same situation, that they don't always have the resources to support. So that's where I love CSAC, that is constantly helping. I mean, just a shout out to Sarah. I watch on TikTok, so Sarah every now and then I watch it, and I was just like, you're supporting thousands of students who nowadays use TikTok as a main form of communication. So that those are simple forms of why students are currently not applying, but I hope through this message and through other ways and means, they will be applying in the next upcoming weeks.
Thank you. Those are very helpful observations. Recently at Laney Community College, we met with a number of single mothers who talked about the availability of childcare, which they said was not widely understood in many communities, that when you're a student at a community college and you're a single mom with children, or you may be a mother with a husband and children, that there is childcare possibly in addition to the financial aid. Could you speak a little bit about the availability of financial or benefits for people with children who want to go to community college?
I'll say a few words and then I'll pass it over to someone from CISA, possibly Dr. Gonzalez, to go more in detail. And I'll just tackle it from the general perspective. As a students, especially coming from multiple underserved communities, it's very difficult to really get used to all the different resources our system has to offer. I didn't really know what my community college had to offer until I became the student body president for Diablo Valley College. That's where I attend. And then I learned that there's many resources for students of colors, first generation, low income, work student parents, and many others. And so possibly a way of just this miscommunication is the lack of resource or the lack of communication from the institution. Once again, different languages, we have students who are part-time, they work, so they don't always have the time to go in person and ask questions. Just fear in general. Many students is the first time they're ever attending a system of higher education. And, there's many factors. And so for the specific logistics, I'll hand it over to Dr. Gonzalez, but I just wanted to say that it is a common trend that I see, especially for our most underserved students, especially non-traditional students, returning students, do struggle quite often just getting adjusted to being back in a classroom when sometimes the students are younger and you may be one of the oldest. However, there's a lot of support available. It's just all about communicating and getting the effective resources, but sometimes it's difficult to know where to start. So with that, I'll pass it over to Dr. Gonzalez to talk more about the specifics of
Well,
the.
and I don't want to take our focus off of the financial aid, but the community colleges are such a hub of support that I think we're gradually beginning to build a different perception of how you can access tremendous benefits by enrolling. Anything, Dr. Gonzalez, you want to add before we go to our third speaker?
Yes, of course. I definitely want Nancy to be able to say a few words about this topic and just say we are extremely lucky to live in California. The state legislature, Governor Newsom, has made a lot of investments, at least in the last 3 years specifically, as it relates to students with dependents. And we just had the team, thank you, Sarah Beth, for posting and reminding us. When a student submits their application, particularly for a California community college by September 3rd, that application makes it available for all of the grants and scholarships that are available in California. So I gave the example, I was a foster youth, so I qualified for the Chafee grant. That's a very specific grant just for foster youth. It is federally funded. When it comes to California, we're extremely lucky because our governor has now created Cal grants for students with dependents. That's an additional $6,000 a year for students who are parents. And that is not just to cover what the costs would be for childcare, but thinking through all of the costs like transportation. I think specifically for California community college students, it's important that we acknowledge that the tuition cost is very low, $46 per unit, but the total cost of their success and the reason why we want to encourage students to fill out the actual FAFSA and CADAA form is because they qualify for many different programs. And that application shows them what are the costs that can be covered. So instead of just promoting one program, we promote the application, the deadline, because that's what makes students available for the financial aid in California.
Thank you so much. Let's go now to our third speaker, Nancy Joditis, Director of Higher Education at Immigrants Rising. Ms. Joditis, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to both Dr. Gonzalez and Yvonne, and to all of you, the journalists who are here today, to help amplify this really important story. My name is Nancy Joditis. I'm the Director of Higher Education at Immigrants Rising, and we're an organization that's dedicated to empowering undocumented people in their college and career path. And I will be sharing some resources as we go, but I've been working at Immigrants Rising for about 10 years. Prior to that, I worked as a financial aid counselor and as an undocumented student advisor and transfer counselor at a four-year university, San Francisco State University. So intricately connected to the struggles that both students and institutions face, trying to make sure that they can get all the financial aid for which they're eligible. I'm really excited to be here with Dr. Gonzalez, someone so deeply committed to equity with years of experience in developing and elevating support for underrepresented students, and also super grateful, Yvonne, for your work with the California Community College Senate. I'm so sorry for the challenges that you and thousands of other students had to face when applying for FAFSA this year as a mixed status family. But also want to give a shout out for the efforts of the California Student Aid Commission, for Sarah Beth, for Michael, who are on the call, but for the entire team at the California Student Aid Commission who did their work to kind of keep everybody updated on the ever-changing process for mixed status families. It's really been a challenge. And I think that part of that sort of like space being taken up around like the better FAFSA and the new FAFSA and the mixed status families sometimes impacted the way in which undocumented students felt that they had the ability to be able to go to college. And so I have four main messages that I want to share with you today. One, most importantly, undocumented students can go to college in California. I'm still being contacted by students who are being told, both in high school and adult school and other places, that college is not for them. And I want to make sure that the message comes through loud and clear. California has been a leader in the nation in terms of legislative support. And regardless of what happens at a national level, not that that won't impact us, not that fear isn't present, but to make sure that everyone knows that California will continue to stand for immigrants who have been such an integral part of our community and our state's economy and our state's education, and people we know and love. I think also it's really important to know that every public college and university in California has someone dedicated to supporting undocumented students at their school. And I'm going to be sharing this one note, which is sort of like a note to undocumented students. It talks about you can go to college, financial aid is available, there's in-state tuition available for you, and it has a link to the map that is actually going to allow students to know which college and who they should be contacting to be able to get support. I think that it's so important to address the idea that everybody, you just might need to find the person and knock on a few doors, but there's somebody at every single public college and university, and even some of the privates that have been doing this work and have been doing this work for years. I also think it's really important for us to remember that not all undocumented students are Latinx. Remembering that there are Black undocumented students, there's many Asian and Pacific Islander students, there are white undocumented students. And I think if we just kind of talk to who we think is in the room, that we're missing many who believe, that this information might not be for them. And that I think, Dr. Gonzalez raised this, but I think it's also just really important to remember that when applying to financial aid, especially in California and especially with the California DREAM Act, that this information is protected. This is a letter from the former director with the Department of Education, and I know that Dr. Gonzalez is working on updating this letter that highlights those supports and that their information is protected. I think that students are concerned, not just for themselves, but for their families, that if they do apply to a state agency or they do put their information in around their taxes, that somehow that's going to come back and hurt them. We have protections in place, FERPA, as well as the commitment of the California Student Aid Commission to make sure that their information will not be shared. And also just touching briefly, Dr. Gonzalez spoke about this, but saying a little bit more that financial aid is not considered part of what public charge is. So if the public charge concerns were to come back, I know that students are afraid, if I apply for financial aid, is that going to affect my ability to be able to apply for and adjust my status? Financial aid is not part of that public charge area. So I think that's really important. And then also, as we're speaking about financial aid, I always encourage everybody to speak about FAFSA or DREAM. Did you apply for the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application? There's a FAFSA and California DREAM Act application by September 30th, because sometimes I think people use FAFSA sort of like the way we use Xerox, right? It's wraparound. But if students hear there's just FAFSA and they don't hear the California DREAM Act mentioned, they might think that, oh, well, that's not for me. And Immigrants Rising, as well as the California Student Aid Commission, has resources that are available, both limited information that's English and Spanish, but California DREAM Act checklists, information about AB 540, which is a requirement for financial aid, both in English and Spanish, and thinking about also that there are scholarships that are available in English and Spanish as well. So, scholarships that are available for individuals that are regardless of your immigration status. And the last point that I really wanted to uplift is just how is it that we can convey in more strong terms that there is life beyond DACA, beyond deferred action. I think we are so lucky for those who have been able to apply for DACA, but since it's rescission, I think that has a strong impact on enrollment for undocumented students in terms of why should I get a college? Is financial aid even available for me? Is it safe? We want to let students know, and we want you to help us let the communities know that all of these are not that they're not concerns that people should not be thinking about, but that we have created solutions here in California to address those fears, and that individuals can start their own business. It's fully legal for individuals to start their own business, regardless of their immigration status. And Immigrants Rising has a lot of information to help and support individuals in these areas. So I just want to thank all of you for helping us elevate this work, and to thank the California Student Aid Commission for their very strong role. I'm a proud product of the community colleges myself. I know how invaluable it has been to help students, not just students from high school, but students of every age, return back to school, get the support that they need, and be able to prepare themselves for whatever academic choices are, be that a certificate, be that learning English as a second language, be that associate's degree, transfer, or returning back to graduate school. And all of those opportunities are also available for undocumented students. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a number of questions. I'm going to start with Sunita Sarabji. Could you ask your question?
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for all of that information. That is so useful. I wanted to ask, what happens when your grant hasn't come through, but classes have started? I know my daughter faced that a couple of times as she was going through UC Riverside, that the classes had started, her FAFSA grant had not come through yet. Are there safety nets, and do universities allow students to continue regardless of whether their tuition has been covered?
I think that this is there's different policies within each of the higher education systems, and there are different deadlines within each higher education system. But I think that there are protections that are put in place, because once students have actually enrolled, we do want to make sure that they are able to have that financial aid come through. But there are some students who are dropped for non-payment. So I think another message that's really important is to have communication with the student in the financial aid office, and actually not just be like, okay, they said yes, but Nancy said yes. She said yes to me on 8/26. She told me I have this many days to do X and Y and Z. So really, communication, advocacy, and documentation can support students, so that once they've done that hard work of applying, getting accepted, and moving forward, that isn't sort of put out, especially for some kind of bureaucratic delay.
Thank you.
We have a comment from one of our CSAC participants, Sarah Beth, who was addressing the issue of language access. And I want to share it with people because it's really very impressive. The call center, and by that, I'm assuming you mean the call center through CSAC, has language access in 70 languages. Our outreach materials are available in Spanish, Mandarin, Korean, Armenian, and Arabic. So thank you, Sarah Beth, for adding that to the chat. I think some of us focus on watching and listening, but don't always access everything in the chat. I want to go back to Yvonne Hernandez and ask Yvonne a little bit of a sense of why I'm very concerned about the decline in enrollment and how best to reverse it. And obviously, awareness of the financial aid available, all these benefits, and the extent to which your status, be it documented or undocumented, for example, is not a barrier. But what is your general sense of the most important incentives people need to think they can go to college? You mentioned your internship with Microsoft as being an example, and Dr. Gonzalez's own life career of being able to build on education success to really open up opportunities. What are the kind of opportunities we in the ethnic media sector need to emphasize to encourage people about the importance of starting college, of going to community college? You're closer to your generation than most of us on this call.
Certainly. Well, I can start off by addressing the first question regarding the dropout rates. Ever since the pandemic in 2020, we certainly lost a few thousands of students just because of many personal situations. However, recently our increasement has gone up. We are about, if I'm hopefully not mistaken, 2.1 million California community college students. We went from 1.8 back to 2.1, which were around the numbers we had prior to COVID. So thankfully, more and more students are getting back into our system of higher education. So that's great. I will say, of course, it's always a student dependent. We do have a big number of non-traditional and part-time students in the system of California Community College students, which means many of them work. Some of them are trying out to see if it working. We have parents working, student parents. And so it's always a constant, let me see if I can make it work. Some students can, some other ones don't. So it's always a battle between, can I pursue education now or should I wait until next year? But in the good news, we are having students come back to our campuses in person as well as online, which provides the flexibility for our part-time students. Now, what are some incentives for students? Well, like my parents used to say, and they always say it to me even now, education is the only thing no one can take away from you. And that comes from parents who never went to college, who never even made it to middle school. And it was always interesting hearing from them who never had that experience say, ever since I was a baby, saying, you're going to go to college and you're going to. And it's because they see that as a life-changing experience, something that they didn't have, but yet they wanted, in this case, their son to have. And I see it, and it hasn't been easy. I have to admire. I am a computer science student, and the classes are challenging. Sometimes I feel like I'm not being supported enough, but having these eye-opening experiences through the SSCCC, when I was a student body president, in my previous internships, fellowship programs that I attended, being able to travel to places I never would have think of for free are things that really makes me feel like I'm giving back to the community. And just being able to participate in this webinar, I think is for someone like myself, having a platform and a voice in here is sharing the perspective of thousands of other individuals who don't have this platform right now. So I will say a big incentive is making a long time investment in yourself. Education, if you utilize our FAFSA as well as DREAM Act, in many cases is free, and we have thousands of other scholarships that thankfully can play a big role, internal and external scholarships that students can apply. And so I just think it's an investment in yourself to make sure that in the future you're helping out for the betterment of your family, you're helping out your parents, you're helping out your future kids, and just in general, you're bringing awareness to education and how we as a nation can help contribute to the betterment of our world in general. So hopefully those are some good incentives for anyone that is out there hearing. There's always hope.
Those are very inspiring words. I want to go to Dr. Gonzalez now and ask, you mentioned that there is a map that kind of shows where enrollment may be surging or enrollment may be declining. Most of us, we are media all over the state, and I just think it would be very helpful for us to learn from you where or can you give us a little bit of a sense of the geographic range and what areas you think are the decline or the absence of student applications really worries you? Where should we focus geographically on populations where you would like to see a real increase?
Well, thank you, Nancy. First, let me just clarify that we don't manage enrollment, but we are a critical tool in ensuring that students can access, persist, and succeed in education. And the reason why we know that is because when you ask students, what is the most important motivator? The one thing that you need as a resource to enroll, persist, and succeed, they always say financial aid. And that is the work of the California Student Aid Commission. What I mentioned was after this briefing, we will be sharing with you what are those regions, particularly for California's community colleges, because our deadline is on September 3rd, where FAFSA, that is the federal application, and the California DREAM Act application, otherwise known as CADAA, where those numbers have decreased from the prior year. And that means that the California Student Aid Commission is going to be laser focused on those regions, as well as the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, as well as the Student Senate and Immigrants Rising and all of our partners. And what I want you to know when you look at those slides is that the assumptions that you can make is those are the regions that need the most help, the regions that need us to reassure them that there are a number of resources that are available to their student populations. But when you look closely, it's also a number of those regions that you will see in the top 10 are those regions with the largest percentage of undocumented or immigrant populations. And that is really why we are all here. We're here because we need you to share our message that it is not too late to apply for financial aid if you're trying to attend the California Community College this fall. And that means the 24-25 education year. And we're also here because there is a lot of resources still on the table, meaning it's not too late for our community college students. We are hoping that they enroll because there is still money on the table, and we know that it can make a difference in making a decision as to whether they can afford their education this year.
Those are such great sound bites, frankly, that it leads me to my final question, which is for all of our three speakers. Journalists like to say that a lot of the success of our stories comes from our headlines. Can we get the right headline that will make the impression, even while we've just written a very long and very considered report? Headlines matter. So our question to each of you, what would you recommend as the most important message in a very short headline you would like us to get to our audiences about the deadline, about the importance of applying by the deadline, and about the, as you said, Dr. Gonzalez, the deadline is also a lifeline. Give us your best headline for this effort we're all going to make to get the word out. And I'm going to start with our last speaker, Nancy Judaitis. Not to put you on the spot, Nancy.
I was hoping I had a few more minutes to come up with my headline, but I think my headline would be undocumented students can go to college and there's support for you.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. And Yvonne Hernandez, what for you would be a headline you would recommend we use?
Thank you. I'm actually going to type it in the chat because it's in Spanish, but the headline will be Si se puede, si se pudo, y siempre se podrá, which kind of refers to we did it, you can, or like we did it, you can do it, and you can always, or you always will. My translation is a bit off, but just emphasizing the idea that regardless of any challenges you encounter, there will always be a way to get through those.
That's a wonderful message, and thank you for writing it in the chat in Spanish. And we end with Dr. Gonzalez. I sort of stole your headline, but please offer whatever headline you want to end this briefing with.
Yeah, so this is that pop question you were gonna ask us, right?
Yes.
Well, coming fresh from that question around enrollment, I think very similar to what Nancy shared, it's not too late to go to college. And then if I had a subheading, it would be $383 million in aid available by September 3rd. That is the magnitude, the equity gap. That is a lifeline for students.
Well, you've all three hit the jackpot. You've given us very good ideas for headlines. I love the idea that it's not too late to go to college, because that also takes in the incredibly diverse age group that we're targeting. Thank you to all of you for a wonderful and enlightening hour, and we will do our best to amplify your message. It's a very hopeful message to our audiences. Thank you so much. And this conference is now adjourned.